Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Thursday college football, basketball blitz stacked up show today. Going to start off batting in the leadoff position, a 6'2", 203-pound junior from Sylacauga, Alabama, Jason Caldwell, Alabama Sports Writer of the Year, inside the Auburn Tigers, and always love to get his insight as Auburn is quietly 5-1 in the SEC right now in basketball. This is Bruce Pearl gets blood out of a turnip, man. Absolutely is amazing. And Leo Berman is becoming a cult hero, a rock star. The 6'4", junior out of Mountain Brook, man. 16 minutes last night, 8 points. Hit a three-pointer. Auburn gets the biggest road win in Baton Rouge since 2017. Tigers win by 18. Jason, we're going to talk about that. Second segment, Gary Harris checks in, Tide 100.9, WVUA TV 23 in Tuscaloosa. You can check him out Tuesday nights with Rodney Orr of Tider Insider. They do a great football show every Tuesday night. Top of hour number 2, we'll have the AD angle. John Hartwell will check in with us. And Matt Dean from over in Memphis. I'm talking a lot of basketball as well. We're here Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week. Also, if you miss us live at www.sidelines.live, we are on 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta, Kicks 96.3 down in Alexander City, Lake Martin. Also picking up now on WLIV 104.7 Cookeville, Tennessee, and looking at several more stations hopefully coming on here in the next week or so as we build the Sidelines Southern Sports Network. Again, 6 days a week. We're here. Follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_, at @sidelines_live. But a great day today. A lot happening. And Jason, what do you think? I know there's a lot of talk about football and recruiting and all, but this Auburn basketball team, this is the 9th year of Bruce Pearl. And let's give him credit for getting Auburn to the NCAA tournament in the March 20 season when the pandemic hit. And they shut down. No more fun of any kind. The Burgermeister declared no fun. Nobody can do anything. Lock yourself inside, stay at home, go broke, whatever. But there was no NCAA tournament that year. But I dare I'll argue with anybody, Auburn would have gone. So let's say 4 out of 8 years. And this team is playing with whatever they got to do. They throw the kitchen sink at you every night, this Auburn basketball team. What do you think?
Yeah, no, they've gotten better, especially the last 4 or 5 games out. Since that Georgia game in Athens, and it helped. Hey, when Wendell Green plays better, this is a much different basketball team. He's the key to this team, and obviously, Jalen Williams is a guy that can score and do those things. Alan Flanagan has come on, but when Wendell Green plays well and does the things he does, then this is a completely different basketball team. They're not going to be a team that's going to go out and score 85. That's just not who this team is. But they feed off each other on each end of the court. If they can get stops defensively, it helps them on the offensive end because then they get transition, do some of those things, vice versa. If they get transition, then they can score and they can set up their defense. And so when they have trouble on one end, it impacts both ends. And last night got off to a pretty good start again, which is a huge key for them. And then they made it stand up. They never trailed the entire basketball game, pretty much in control, other than a little run by LSU there to start the second half, and a really good timeout by Bruce Pearl. He hasn't normally done that a whole lot. He's done it with this team a couple of times now this year, and it's really paid off. And so. They were able to kind of catch their breath, and without Chris Moore, Alan Flanagan's having to play more minutes, and I think that's impacted him a little bit. And he said, "Look, get a breath and get back out there and play defense," and they did, and that's been the key. So I said going into this stretch of this is kind of an 8-game season and a 10-game season for me in terms of SEC play, with that West Virginia game on the road in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You look at the back half of this, those last 10 games, and you've got Tennessee twice, you've got Alabama twice, you're at Kentucky, and you're at Texas A&M. That's as tough a schedule as anybody's going to have in the country. So you got to make hay the first 8 games of the schedule. They've now given themselves a chance. They're 5-1, and you look at it and you go, you got South Carolina and Texas A&M, South Carolina on the road, Texas A&M at home. I thought 6-2 would put them in a pretty good position. If you can get to 7-1, then you put yourself in a really good position, and now they're giving themselves that opportunity.
Yeah. What is it about a lot? We had Coach John Brady, formerly of Samford and LSU and Arkansas State, went to the Final Four in 2006. He's on with us every week during basketball season and talked about that Auburn LSU matchup. And he's so impressed with Bruce Pearl, how he he gets every ounce of talent out of his players. He finds lineups that work, and he doesn't listen to the outside noise. Defense, it's amazing if you can get your guys to buy all in and play a full 40 of defense, plus you got a chance in every single game, and you're not gonna get out hustled. And there are plenty of nights when you play teams that aren't feeling it, and if you're playing defense and diving for loose balls, you can pick up some low hanging fruit.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it right now. The 2 teams that are doing a really good job of that are Auburn and Texas A&M. You watch Texas A&M and you go, man, that team talent-wise does not look like it belongs. And I think they've won 9 straight SEC games going back to last year, maybe a few more than that. So they've done a good job. And you look last night, they held Florida 13 points in the first half of a basketball game. Auburn held LSU to 13, I think until about 4 minutes left. In the first half last night. And defense is effort. You have to understand your principles, the things you're doing on defense. But Auburn's done a good job this year of mixing in some zone at times, doing some different things with this team to give people different looks. They switched a lot last night against LSU. And so that's the key. And I think it helps that you've got Wendell Green and Zep Jasper and KD Johnson, Jalen Williams. Janai Broom's an experienced guy, Alan Flanagan. You got some guys that have played a lot of basketball. And so I think that's helpful on the defensive end. It's just a matter of when you combine that with making a few shots, then all of a sudden it makes everything better. When you're not shooting well, it impacts every part of your game. And we've seen that for this team. All of a sudden you make a few shots and it gives you a little bit more energy.
Yeah. Well, you look at that Auburn Mississippi State game Saturday night at Neville Arena. Mississippi State, scrappy, tough team. They always are. They play Auburn tough every time. 0 for 18 from 3-point range. I mean, if they hit 5 or 6, it's a different game. But I want to say now about the emergence of Leor Berman. He's having to play more because West Memphis, Arkansas native, and people up here, follow this guy, and they're still hurt that he left the state. And he talks about, this state, Alan Flanagan from Little Rock, both of them starters for Auburn. But when you got a guy like Leor Berman, who's just been hanging around, but he works, he's a student of the game. He's going to end up being a coach. That's what I think. But he comes off the bench and gives you 16 minutes last night. That's an energy and a boost that I don't think anybody was counting on before the season. But it's amazing once a guy gets a chance to show what he can do in live time, in real time. Are you surprised? You get to see these guys in practice. He's pretty good.
Yeah, no, this is a guy that 10 years ago was probably playing 25 to 30 minutes for Auburn basketball. He's a good player. And here's the thing about him is he knows how to work, and he's very fundamentally sound coming from Mountain Brook, where they won 3 state championships. His former high school coach is now coaching at Samford and doing a really good job.
Yeah.
And so they know how to play basketball. He's good. He's physical, more athletic than people give him credit for, and he can do some things. And so I think he's given himself now a role for this team to maybe be a guy that can provide a little scoring punch off the bench. And I think now that he's gotten his feet wet a little bit with this team, there's a difference between playing 8 minutes at the end of the game when you're up by 30 and 8 minutes when the game's on the line. It's a different feel altogether. Last night was a guy that I saw comfortable in that role for the first time. He's been in those situations before. I thought last night he's like, okay, I'm going to let the game come to me. He didn't have to worry about, I need to take advantage of my minutes because this is all I'm getting. and it made a difference for him. So I think now that he's kind of settled in, I think he could be a guy that gives a little bit of scoring punch off the bench for this team.
Well, it's like a quarterback. If you're constantly looking over your shoulder about being pulled out because you might make a mistake, that's detrimental to your success. And we know if you're too quick to pull somebody out in anything, and Berman getting to play knowing, hey, take the shots. I think John Brady said yesterday, maybe it was Bruce Pearl who made the comment about, you can't recruit shooters. I mean, they either can shoot or they can't. And you can't recruit length. You're born that way. And you don't get too complicated with it. But I watched Bruce Pearl in the games. He lets the players, I mean, they work them so hard in practice. I mean, I've heard his practices are as intense as any intense football practice. And during the games, the players don't seem like they're real uptight. Is that how you see it?
It is. That it's one of the biggest strengths for Bruce Pearl. He's the ultimate in a player's coach. He lets those guys go make plays, and he doesn't rein them in a ton. Sometimes that can hurt you a little bit at times, but the overwhelming positive that comes out of that shows up night after night and over the long haul, where you have guys that can go out there and make plays. And you saw early in the year how this team trying to figure it out was much better in the second half because they were in front of the bench. Well, now they're getting better in the first half of games because now they're getting some of those things done on their own and figuring it out. And you have to do that. Basketball is a game that is so much off the cuff. You got to go, and it's instinctive. And you mentioned it earlier. People talking about shooting. I think you look at it and overall in the game of basketball. Now in the NBA, you got the top, not even 1%. It's much less than that of those guys. Those guys can still shoot the basketball really well. Yeah. But you look at the college game, high school game now, and it's become, bombing threes or getting to the rim, and the shooting part of it has suffered. And you can work at it and you can get better, but it's much like a rebounder. The best rebounders of our generation weren't guys that were 7 feet tall. No. The best rebounders of our generations were Charles Barkley and Charles Oakley and Dennis Rodman. Those guys were 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", right, because they worked at it, but they were instinctive. They knew where the ball was coming off the rim the moment it was put up. Yeah. You don't find many guys like that. Oscar Tshiebwe is one of those guys. Yes. But you don't find many of those guys anymore. And it's the same thing with shooters. You either have that knack, same like a golfer. You can either putt or you can't. You can work at it all you want to, but if you don't have that feel for being able to putt, it's hard to get a whole lot better. Same thing with shooting basketball.
Yeah. Well, you remember when Ja Morant was, I guess, a sophomore, when Murray State came and played at Neville Arena. My son Wilson was in school at Auburn at the time, and he said, "Dad, that's the greatest college basketball player I've ever seen in person." He goes, "If he's not the number one pick in the draft, somebody's got some splaining to do." I get to go watch him play for the Grizzlies. He's a great player, but he's a good guy. He's got a lot of positive karma around him, but God, he can shoot. And you think about when these European players come over, and you're ever listen to them when they're interviewed, they'll spend one entire day every week doing nothing but fundamentals, shooting free throws, just working on the little things that add up really in a big way on game night. And it's hard to get the American players to buy into that, probably because in middle school, they're kind of sold off to these AAU coaches who are just, unfortunately, just making money off of them. It's just a mess, but they don't focus on fundamentals. If you get these guys that are great athletes to buy into playing defense and rebounding, if you shoot a lot of threes, what do you got to be able to do? You got to be able to rebound out on the perimeter, or you're not going to exist, are you?
Yeah, no, it's I saw somebody talking to, I think it was JJ Redick, talking about how his training regimen and what he did and how many shots he put up every day of his life, even into the NBA and doing those things. And that's what it takes. That's where, you can be a good shooter and turn yourself into a great shooter by doing those things. But you got to have that feel, and it's hard. You can get better, but you're not going to go from terrible to all of a sudden Steph Curry. You're not making that jump. That starts early. That starts when we're doing those things when you're young. And when you look at Steph Curry, he's played basketball. He's grown up shooting basketball his whole life. Jabari Smith with his dad. The difference in Jabari Smith and Johan Traore, one guy had a dad that had played in the NBA, that knew the fundamentals of the game, and he'd been doing it since he could walk. The other one has not played basketball very long. That's the difference in having a guy that's ready today versus a guy that has all that ability, but it's not there yet because he just hasn't had that time that put in as the other guy.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you come to Memphis, we'll go to a Grizzlies game. I'll get some good tickets for us, and I go to a lot of the games, and I've some 25, 30 a year if I can. And it is just amazing to watch these big guys like a Kevin Durant at 6'10", post up and drain 3-pointers. And you watch LeBron James play, and you look at the guys coming in. Of course, John Morant is a Grizzly, but it's almost they're doing it blindfolded. It's like the great golfers, keep your head down, your knees bent, and follow through. It's not about how much muscle you've got or anything like that. It's about the motion and going through and shooting. When you and I were coming up, you had those shooting guards. I'll never forget Darnell Valentine for Kansas. These guys that could just drain it all night long. All right, we're going to take a quick break and come back, talk some Auburn football, recruiting, portal talk with Jason Caldwell, Alabama Sports Writer of the Year, inside the Auburn Tigers. This is great insight you won't get anywhere else except from the Marble Man from Sylacauga, Jason Caldwell, after this.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Jason Caldwell, looking at what Auburn has done so far in recruiting with the December signing period, they go from the mid-50s to probably a consensus 16th ranking. That closed for business sign that was in the front window of the Auburn football office the last couple of years is gone. And don't you feel a renewed sense of energy and positive karma and everybody rowing in the same direction, that if there's a good player out there, you can be guaranteed Hugh Freeze and the guys are going to be there to watch him?
Yeah, no, it's you're right. It's a completely different feel. The energy not only inside the building, but the fan base feels it and they can see it happening. And you saw there's just the easy ways to look at it. You look and when Brian Harsin was fired, Auburn had one of the top 22 players in the state of Alabama in the 2023 class. That was it. And one of those guys, added a couple more of them down the stretch to make it look pretty respectable. If you look at the transfer portal, Auburn's number 2 right now on 247 in transfer portal, just barely behind Florida State. They did exactly what they had to do to give themselves a chance in 2023. They had to have help on the line of scrimmage, offensive line, defensive line. They needed help at linebacker. It added, tight end, a wide receiver, running back. The things they absolutely had to have, they were able to get. Now, they're looking for the right fit at quarterback to come in and compete with Robbie Ashford. Didn't find that guy. And so maybe you go out and look for that guy after the spring, but maybe you go out and Robbie Ashford, Holden Gerner, TJ Finley, who knows? Maybe somebody goes, they go, hey, man, that's our guy right there. And they find that guy in the spring. But they had to have linemen. They had to have players on the line of scrimmage to give themselves any chance. And they were able to do that in short order out of the portal and through recruiting.
Yeah. Got a question, a text here from a listener, Roy Munson at Lancaster, Pennsylvania, says to Jason, in the last 5 years, could you give us the numbers of offensive linemen that Auburn has signed versus LSU, Alabama, and Georgia?
Yeah, I can't remember the numbers for the other schools. I'd have to go back and look. I know this: since 2017, Auburn has signed 8 high school offensive linemen.
How many?
8 since 2017. Prior to this year, Auburn signed 8 offensive linemen since 2017 from high school.
8.
That's it. They signed 3 the last 2 years combined. And this year they signed 4 high school offensive linemen, 1 junior college offensive lineman, and 3 from the portal. So they've got 8 newcomers in this class alone, 4 of them from the high school ranks. So basically almost half of what they signed over the course of the last 6 years, they signed in one class. And that's how you get to where you are. We've been talking about this for years, the lack of development on the offensive line. And it cost them the last couple of years. I mean, you look at it at back-to-back losing seasons, you can tie it to a lot of things. You can tie it to a whole lot of things. Maybe the top of the list is if you can line up and run the football and you got a big, strong offensive line, then it makes everything else around you better. When you can't do that, then it makes it a struggle. And that was just one of the symptoms from them, the end of the Gus Malzahn era, heading into Brian Harsin, was that offensive line. And Hugh Freeze, Jake Thornton, Joe Bernardi, Kendall Simmons, those guys have attempted to remedy that in a hurry, and they've done a pretty good job.
Talk, if you would, about 2 things. Follow up from Roy Munson's question. The role that Kendall Simmons out of Ripley, Mississippi, man, I remember him quite well in his days with the Steelers in the NFL. Great coach, I would believe. Also, Jake Thornton had a reputation, very good reputation at Ole Miss, and is considered to be one of the. And I watched you on a podcast last night that you were on, and it was from back in recruiting. But Jake Thornton's regarded by recruits, not just coaches and analysts and the guys who do all that, but as one of the top and bright offensive line coaches in the country, and he's at Auburn now.
Yeah, no, I think he's a guy that resonates with recruits. Energetic guy, knows what he's doing, been really successful already, and he works. I mean, we talked to a kid that came in, for a visit over the weekend that, he'd been to Auburn for one football game, I think, last fall. He's a 2024 offensive lineman from the state of Georgia, and he said, look, I already had a relationship with Jake Thornton. This is a guy that had a relationship with the kid even while he was at Ole Miss, and now he's at Auburn. So you're crossing those wires a little bit, and that's one of the keys. But yeah, you mentioned Kendall Simmons, but Joe Bernardi's the guy that has offensive line coaching experience that's on this staff as an analyst. So you have 3 guys for that very important offensive line position that can help look for talent, can help talk to those guys, can help them from the mental side of games, all those things, all involved that are very beneficial. Kendall Simmons coached the offensive line at the end of the year last year. Joe Bernardi coached the tight ends. Those guys are there. And when you can have veteran guys that know what they're looking for to help you maybe sort through what you're looking for on the recruiting trail and go, hey, look, I think this guy is a guy that can develop, because that's it. That's the key on the offensive line. There may be 4 guys a year around the country that you go, that's a plug and play offensive lineman that can go early. And we've seen 2 or 3 of those guys at Alabama, a couple at Georgia, maybe a couple at Ohio State. Most of the rest of the country don't get guys like that. you got to find a guy that you go, what's that guy going to look like in 2 years? How is he going to develop? What's his future on the offensive line? And I think they've got a group right now that sees that and understands how important that is.
Another question from listener Plowboy Frazier. He says in Memphis, Auburn fan says, ask Jason if Willie Anderson, who's a legendary up for the Hall of Fame out of Viger down in Mobile, Pritchard, if he at his offensive line training facility in Atlanta is in contact with the Auburn coaches, and if he has any prospects that Auburn is looking at, because it seems like Steve Wallace is also up in Atlanta, and he's got a farm down in LaGrange, and I know some people that see him a lot. He's from Chamblee, but that's a good question. I'm just curious if that's going on.
Yeah, it did not before. I know that to be.
Does that make your head spin?
Yeah, he had some guys that came through and didn't get a whole lot of interest. I think that'll change now. I think they understand the importance of reaching out and doing those things. Right now, for them, this is they had a short window on the road. Now they've got a window to be on the road now for a couple of weeks, and they're going out seeing as many folks as they can. And so I think he's a guy they'll reach out to. Steve Wallace is a guy that comes back religiously to Auburn football games and is on campus. But yeah, I think Willie Anderson's a guy that you'll see continue to get more involved. For them, it's just another tool that's in your tool belt that if you don't use, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think he'll be a guy that they'll reach out to. There's lots of guys, and it's not just Willie Anderson. There's training guys obviously in Montgomery that reach out, that have players and have contact. You look at in the Atlanta area, Brad Lester is one of the top running back coaches over there that has been doing things, but the Birmingham area training facilities. And so those are guys that you have to go talk to, because they see those kids as much or more than their high school coaches do a lot of times, and have a big impact. And so Willie Anderson's another one of those guys that I think if you're Auburn, you go, hey, who do you like? Who do you see? Yeah, it's just another resource.
This is another one. Wesley Duncan, listener down in Fort Lauderdale. I grew up in Opelika, but I live down here in Fort Lauderdale. Junior Rosegreen has been doing a lot of work down here. Yep. From Dillard High School. And Junior's still the hardest hit I've seen put on an Auburn game against Darrell Brown, the 2004 Auburn-Georgia game.
Yeah. Junior's doing a lot of that. He's been, doing some high school coaching, but trains a lot of guys too. So yeah, Junior's another one of those guys. And obviously, with Zach Etheridge here, Cadillac here, there's some connections to some of those former players that do some of those things.
Yeah. Well, listen, Jason, I know you got to get going. Let people know how they can follow you. You put out great information. Also active on Twitter, keeping people up to date with stuff. But I like to say about you, you're not trying to get it first. You're trying to get it right. And that's why you're, love having you on this show, and you're a true grit journalist all the way.
Yeah, you can check us out at auburnundercover.com, autigers.com, and can also follow me on Twitter at ITATJason.
Hey, Jason, one more thing. In the February signing period, this is another question coming in from Al Sherman up in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Says, does he expect Auburn to get any surprises in the first Wednesday in February, which is kind of a, after the event nowadays?
Correct. It is. And that's one of the reasons why I right now, as it stands, I don't know. There could be a couple of guys that signed that are potential walk-on guys. One of those was a running back from Mobile area that committed just a few days ago. But okay. Here's the way I describe it now. If you can find a unicorn in February, which is a guy that maybe blows up out of nowhere, or you get in on one of these with a couple of 5 stars that are left, to me, that's probably the best case scenario. Other than that, I think you're already focusing more on 2024s right now, because the majority of your class signs in the early period. And I think that's the way it is for most of the people around the country nowadays.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to it, because I know you had talked about, regardless, 2023 was going to be a struggle, but with the inroads Auburn's making in recruiting, that's given, I think, a lot of people encouragement. But look, let's talk to you again next week. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Rob. You too.
All right. That is Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers. You got to love him. 23 years he's been covering Auburn. Mark Murphy Philip Marshall, 24/7 Sports, great folks down there inside the Auburn Tigers, at magazine since 1981. Interesting. Hey, you know the oldest living journalist is in the state of Alabama? Kirk McNair. I would love to have Kirk McNair on this show. He's really a guy that's been behind a lot of these magazines and that started covering specific schools and all. But Kirk McNair, just incredible. Would love to get him on Sidelines here with us. Gary Harris will be joining us here in just a moment. Perfect timing, man. We go from Jason Caldwell on the plains of Auburn to Tuscaloosa to Gary Harris, native son of Anniston, WVUA TV 23, Tide 100.9, and a reporter who works I think you work about 18 hours a day covering Alabama. And
in my car right now on the way to the studio for the radio show. But
I'm saying that you work harder than James Brown, man. I love it. Gary, we're talking about basketball first, and then we're going to do some football. This Alabama team, and last year they got off to a great start, and they didn't maintain that momentum throughout the season. This year, they're scary good. And you got, Brandon Miller out of Antioch, Tennessee, two-time Gatorade Player of the Year in Tennessee. This team just finds excuses to win. We know about what happened with Darius Miles and all that. But they'll handle that. We'll let the court system handle that. Last time I checked, in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. We're going to see what happens. I mean, there's information coming from everywhere. But you got to focus, the team does, on the next game. And they went up to Vanderbilt. Brandon Miller had 30 points. Where are the weaknesses in this Alabama team? Because as of now, we don't see any, but I'm not a coach and I don't have eyes like they do.
Yeah, 16-2, 6-0 in the SEC. All their SEC games they've won by double digits. 11 points at Mississippi State was the margin of victory was the closest. They had 12 points, 78-66 on Tuesday night in Nashville against Vanderbilt. But I still think that physicality can be a weakness if you're playing a big, physical, strong team. We saw it with UConn early in the year. Of course, I know UConn's having some issues now. I still think they're a really good team. They just lost some tough games. If you can score a lot of
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, if you can score a lot of points, obviously, Gonzaga scored 100. And if you can really, really score, then you got a chance to outscore them, because it's hard to keep Alabama down for 40 minutes. They've got too many scores. They got too many ways to score. Like I said, too many different guys that can find their spots on the floor. And if they're knocking down the three-pointer, then they're really difficult. But if you're a really physical, I think, experienced team with some big bodies that you can muscle them up and you can foul them some, you can give some fouls, you can beat them. Houston is that kind of team, and they were able to beat Houston, which is the number one team in the country, on the road. But still, that was a really tough game. So I think that's the key is you've either got to be able to really physical and muscle them up and just make life tough on them, foul them, hope they're not hitting their free throws, or you got to be a team like Gonzaga that can score a ton of points. Those teams that are kind of in between there, that maybe they're not, don't score a ton of points. Maybe they're not a big physical team. It's difficult for them. Alabama can overwhelm you. You've seen that, Rob. I mean, they can flat out overwhelm you if you're just an average team. But, they've proven that they can be beaten. They've lost 2. I don't think they're going to run through this SEC slate undefeated. And then once you get into the NCAA tournament, I do think that the only 2 things I think that really can keep Alabama from making a deep run, one would be injuries. You get a key guy or 2 hurt, and it changes your whole team. We know that regardless of who you are. If Brandon Miller goes down, this isn't the same Alabama team. And the other thing is that when you get in that tournament and it's single elimination, it's one and done, you can have, matchups can be so important, and you can catch one of those bad matchups and you can have an off day and you can get beat. And if you lose, you're done. So there's never a guarantee, no matter how talented you are, that you're going to make a deep run. But this team has all the ingredients. I've been so impressed with them, Rob. And I'll say this, watching them up close, sitting there last Saturday watching them just dismantle LSU 59-22 at the half. But I didn't sit there and think, oh my gosh, this is a once in a lifetime performance. In fact, I didn't think they shot the ball as well as they're capable of. I still think the ceiling, this team's better now than it was in December. They're going to be better this time in February than they are right now. I think they're going to be better in March than they are in February. Then hopefully, they're playing into April because they're getting better and better. They're still starting 3 true freshmen. So they're good now. I think they can get a lot better. And if they do, we're talking about a team that's got a chance to win it all.
Yeah, and look at the top 4 teams in the country right now. I mean, Kansas, the defending national champion, Alabama. You look out there, Houston. That Alabama has already beaten Houston. They beat North Carolina when they were number 1. North Carolina right now, I don't think they're in the top 25, but you're right. And you saw Auburn fans December 10th losing at State Farm Arena in Atlanta by 11 or 12 to Memphis. And people said, look, it's only December 10th. So you got a long way to go. But this Alabama team looks like they're challenging themselves. Coaches can only yell and holler so much. The players, ultimately, the fire's got to burn from within. They look like they got a lot of leadership on the court. We're going to be right back after this quick break with Gary Harris, Tide 100.9, after this on Sidelines.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Gary, this Alabama team, every night out, they're the hunted. And, Kentucky's used to that. Alabama's used to it in football. And you look around the league and you say, who is other than Alabama, who are the great teams? We thought Tennessee was a special team, and I think they still are. You're not going to win every game. Kentucky comes in. They've got a lot of pride. So you always know that you're going to get everybody's best shot. Right now, everybody's going to be gunning for you. So, if you finish 15-3, 16-2, Gary, you're going to win. You're going to win the SEC in men's basketball. I'm pretty confident of that. But you look at this league top to bottom, Georgia last year was 1-17, Gary. And this year they're 13-5, 3-2 in the SEC. And maybe Auburn's wake-up call was losing on the road at Georgia, but they almost lost to them last year. That play went to the last shot at the buzzer to win. So this league top to bottom, you think the SEC this year is better than it was last year, at least up to this point in the season?
Let me think on that one a second, Rob. I think it's a hard question to answer. I think there's some teams this year in the league that are, don't have great records, but are certainly capable. I would say overall, top to bottom, I think this year's probably a little bit better. I still think that this is it's a really solid league. It's a league where you can get beat every night out. I don't think there are a lot of great teams in the league. I think Alabama has a chance to be and is right now. I think you're right on Tennessee. I still think they could be very good. Auburn's I still think Auburn's a team that is really good, but we don't know how good. I mean, right now they're at a point in their schedule where they're playing teams that they are better than. Their schedule is going to toughen up here in a few games, but right now they're on a roll. Kentucky, I still think's got a chance to be pretty good, but it's a good league. I don't think it's a great league. I think it's solid, but I think they're, all the new coaches, and there's some teams that, for a team like Alabama, a team like Tennessee, that they're going to roll in against some of these teams, and they're just flat out better than a lot of the teams that they're playing. So, comparing it to last year, it's hard for me to answer, but I think this year it's a solid league. I don't think it's a great league.
Yeah, I don't either, and I don't know really, is there a great team? I mean, Gonzaga, a lot of years is considered that, and they still haven't won the national championship. Arkansas took them out last year as the number 1 seed. I want to switch now, talk about football, and some changes on the staff at Alabama. That's not unusual. Pete Golding gone after 4 years. He was co-defensive coordinator this past year with Charles Kelly, and Bill O'Brien, and receivers coach and all. Let's do the breakdown, offense, defense, your takeaways.
Well, Pete Golding, I think, is making a move that's good for him. Rob, I think Pete Golding did a good job here, despite the fans, that vocal minority, I call them, on social media that just, was just, killing the guy every week. I think he's a good defensive coordinator, but I think in this situation, he's getting a raise. He's going to coach for Lane Kiffin, who's going to let him run the defense. Here at Alabama, you've got Nick Saban as your head coach. I mean, clearly Nick Saban is going to have a say-so in what you do defensively, regardless of who the coordinator is. I think at Ole Miss he'll have free reign, so I think it's good for him. I think it's good for Ole Miss. I think it's an upgrade for Ole Miss over Partridge. I think it's an upgrade in terms of the recruiting that they're going to get for Pete Golding. And I think for Alabama and Nick Saban, it's a chance to, kind of tweak some things. Charles Kelly left, as you alluded to go to Colorado, so you've lost your two co-defensive coordinators, Charles Kelly to Colorado, Pete Golding, who was the signal caller and called the defense, to Ole Miss. So for Alabama, it's a chance to, bring in a couple new coaches, and there may be more changes on the staff, but defensively, bring in some new ideas, and I think it could be good for Alabama, although I do think Pete Golding did a good job.
What do you think about possibility of Jeremy Pruitt?
Yeah, it's out there, and I do think it's a possibility, Rob. Clearly, he did a good job when he was the defensive coordinator here, and I think he's a really good defensive coordinator. I think he's a good football coach. I did not think it would work for him at Tennessee. And, there are a lot of good coaches that, and this, they're really good football coaches. They're not meant to be head coaches. All that goes with being a head coach, there's so much more than coaching that's involved. And I don't think that what happened in Tennessee is a indictment at all on what kind of football coach Jeremy Pruitt is, as far as X's and O's and dialing up a defense. I just don't think he's a great fit for a head coaching position in this league. So if he comes back to Alabama, I think he can fall right back into the rhythm that he had here. I don't know that that's going to happen. I really don't. I don't have really any scoop that I can give you, other than I think Nick Saban will take his time and putting this defensive staff together. And I think Pruitt's in play, but by no means do I think it's 100% guarantee that he's coming back. And we know that, there is the NCAA situation. That is a factor. There's no doubt about that. So do I think there's a possibility that Jeremy Pruitt could be on the staff at Alabama this coming season? Yes. Do I think there's a possibility he won't be? Yes. I'd say in my mind it's kind of like one of those 50-50 deals.
Well, there's some hurdles he's got to overcome, but there's no doubt he is an elite coach among the elite defensive coordinator. That's how good he is. And you're right. You become a head coach, you don't get to coach that much.
That's right.
And it's not in spite of the money and the high-profile position that you're in, you find out that you can become miserable. You can be very comfortable making $1.5 million or whatever he would probably make as a defensive coordinator at Alabama or more for a long time. And I would want him as my defensive coordinator. He adjusts, I think some coaches have to wait for their mentor to adjust with them at halftime. Jeremy Pruitt adjusts in real time.
I agree with that.
Play. I think he's that good. I think unfairly castigated by a lot of people. I mean, I have some things went on up at Tennessee, and there was a lot of people involved in that, and they all got in trouble. But dadgummit, the guy can flat out coach. He's a great recruiter, and say what you want. This is my take. When he was at Georgia, he ruffled some feathers because he talked about, you got to get tough and, change this culture of, 9-10 wins is okay. And he made people, which is what I've had to do in jobs and whatever, and coaching kids and running. I always say, I'm going to get you out of your comfort zone. Okay. And you're not going to like it, but that's what he did at Georgia.
Yeah, Rob,
he's been the same since then.
Yeah, he wanted to do a lot of things at Georgia that Kirby Smart did. He had the same mentality. It's just that he was the defensive coordinator. He wasn't the head coach, but he saw the same things that needed to be implemented at Georgia in terms of the facilities, in terms of the attitude, in terms of the recruiting, in terms of the toughness. He just wasn't going to win that fight with Mark Richt as a head coach. But when Kirby got in there, Kirby took a lot of the same ideas and the same things that Pruitt wanted to do. And we see what Georgia has become. So, no, I'm with you on Jeremy Pruitt as a football coach, as a getting in front of the whiteboard, get in front of the players, install a defense, call a game, adjust on the fly. I think you're right. I think he's tremendous. I just, I think we both agree. As a head coach, as you said, coaching's probably secondary to running the organization and being the face of the program. And, he got involved in some things at Tennessee. As you said, it wasn't just Jeremy Pruitt. It was a culture there. But as far as just a football coach, and if he comes to Alabama and comes back to Alabama, he's going to get to coach football for Nick Saban. So I agree with you. I think he would do an excellent job. I just don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, and if not at Alabama, somewhere. I would hope
he'll coach again.
You got to remember this. He's a young guy, and he's talented. But I expect him to be back in coaching. And he's my wife Audrey's one of her favorite coaches, and I'm a big fan of his. I've watched him. He wins everywhere he coaches. And as a head coach, okay, forget about that. Okay, so let's see what happens now. Another question: they're making a change at wide receiver coach at Alabama. Everybody talks about that iconic photograph. Put it up there with 52 backfield at Oklahoma with Billy Vessels and Buddy Leak and Bud Wilkinson and that great black and white framed photo that's in every Oklahoma fan's den or office. Go back to Jerry Jeudy out of Deerfield Beach, Florida. Jalen Waddle out of Harborview, Texas, or Bellevue, Texas. You had, Ruggs out of Montgomery,
Smith.
out of Carver, and then Devontae Smith out of Amite, Louisiana. Those four guys walking out on the practice field. And then you brought in Jamison Williams from Ohio State, Burton this past year.
Mechie.
John Mechie III out of on Toronto, whatever, who couldn't go home for 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ridley before that, and Julio
out of Miami, and his brother, of course, played at Georgia. The receiver room at Alabama in the last 8 years is better than majority of college football programs' 130 or 40-year histories. So
yeah, those four that you mentioned, I thought about that a lot because LSU's had some really good wide receivers too, and unfortunately, what's happened with Henry Ruggs is, clearly, obviously taking him off the field. But that picture that you're referring to, when you've got Jeudy and Ruggs and Smith and Waddle all on the same team, 4 first-round draft picks, 4, and if Ruggs was playing, he'd be right there with them. 4 really good NFL players. I don't know that you'll see that again. I don't know that you'll ever see a better collection of wide receiver talent on one team than you saw with those 4 guys. I mean, I watched them up close, and the thing about Alabama in 2019, they didn't win the SEC or the national championship. Obviously, LSU did, but that year Waddle got hurt, Tua got hurt. They lost at home to LSU in an incredible game, and then of course lost at Auburn in the Iron Bowl when Mac Jones was playing quarterback. But had that team stayed healthy and had Tua been healthy for that LSU game, LSU was so good. I don't know that Alabama would have won the game. But if they had won that game and Tua had not gotten hurt, and, Waddle hadn't gotten hurt, and, I think that they would have had, that team could have challenged anybody in the country. And then, of course, in 2020, they won it all. So, great group of wide receivers.
And you just, I've never seen anything like it, and just absolutely amazing. And then, and the good thing about those guys, you didn't have the prima donna mentality like Odell Beckham or Keyshawn Boutte at LSU. I mean, I wouldn't give you a nickel for him. I mean, he was a distraction after the first loss of the year in the Superdome, Florida State, when they beat LSU, and then he quit on his team before the bowl game. So that right there, and you know how I feel about the portal. I understand sometimes you need to make a change. But we're supposed to be colleges and universities are there to educate, not to placate. Okay, you teach people, hey, things ain't going your way. Well, then figure something out and get tougher. Get tougher than the circumstances. You be your opponent's adversity. You don't wait for adversity to show up on your doorstep. You be their worst nightmare. That's how you got to approach things. And I am just fascinated. I love to study when I'm on long bike rides or I'm working, out. I'll put my earphones in, listen to motivation tapes and speeches and all. And you listen to the great coaches, the great achievers in anything. They look at the word no as tell me more. They treat the word impossible as motivation. And Gary, to me, what you're talking about with Alabama, we may never see it again. Those four guys walking out on the practice field at one time. And of course, then also Alvin Kamara was in a traffic jam of players in front of him. He goes to Tennessee and look at him in the NFL. It's amazing. Real quick, I know you got to go get ready for your show. Closing comments and on these coaching changes at Alabama. You think maybe some more are going to come in between now and early February? At least the start of spring practice.
Here are a couple things. First of all, on Pete Golding, I don't think Nick Saban was going to fire Pete Golding, regardless of what some people were saying. I think if Pete Golding had not gotten another job, he'd still be here. I do think Bill O'Brien is ultimately going to wind up in the NFL. I think that was kind of the plan when he came here. Yeah. But I don't think he's going to be fired. And so what I mean is if something happens that he doesn't go to the NFL, I think he could very well be back here. I think Bill O'Brien's done a good job. I think you look at the numbers, Alabama's offense the last 2 years has been prolific. And I think Nick Saban respects Bill O'Brien like most in the coaching profession do. But ultimately, I do think he is going to wind back up in the National Football League. So you're going to be looking for an offensive coordinator. And much like the defensive coordinator, right now, I can't, for one thing, Bill O'Brien's still employed. And secondly, I don't know where Saban will go with that. He will make a decision when it's time to make one. But I do think more coaching changes are coming. And I think it's an opportunity again for Nick Saban to kind of, reinvent himself one more time as this game of college football continues to evolve. And nobody's evolved better with it, in my opinion, than Nick Saban. And that's why he's arguably the greatest of all time.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Hey, quick question for you. Are you still on the cord cable, or have you cut the cord and are you streaming?
You in regards to what now?
Watching TV.
I'm still on DirecTV. I'm still on satellite. Yeah.
Okay, that's a curious question. Nigel, our web guy, said start asking people that, because the reason I say it is I was talking to somebody in a town in central Alabama with about 12,000 people. And he said, go back 10 years ago, 80% of the people that used to be on cable have left. Those numbers are changing, where people get their information and all. But anyway, what are you talking about on your show today before you go? And then let people know how they can follow you.
JP Shadrick on from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we're going to talk about the Jags and an amazing finish to the season that they had, their playoff game. And Jeff Spiegel, my buddy from ABC 33 and 40 in Birmingham, will be talking some ball with me. We'll take some phone calls, and we'll get it started at 9 o'clock on Tide 100.9 FM. Hey, thank you, Rob.
Hey, look, have a great one. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, man.
Gary Harris down in Tuscaloosa. Matt Dean checks in with us right now. And Matt, John Hartwell joins us also at the top of the hour, talking a lot about college basketball, man. I know you're a basketball junkie. 16 years you coached women's basketball, AD, now associate AD. You understand about the coaching part of it. We're talking about Jeremy Pruitt. Didn't work out at Tennessee. He wasn't the only one up there. It was a culture. It was a problem. He's out. I'd hire him in a second as my defensive coordinator. The guy wins everywhere he goes. He's a great coach. He's a great recruiter. I tell you who he reminds me of. Remember the original movie, The Longest Yard, with Burt Reynolds? Remember that guy, Shatner? They brought him out there in leg irons and shackles, with his hands. The bald guy looked a lot like Pruitt. And they said, hey, he goes, we want you to play for the football team. He goes, nah. He goes, you get to hit the guards. He goes, I'll play. That's who I want coaching my defense. We'll be right back with Matt Shatner Dean after this.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett and Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right. Matt Dean here with us. Matt, what a basketball season we got going on in the SEC and around the country. SEC, we're asking everybody this question. Do you think the SEC at this point is better than it was at this point last year? Gary Harris down in Tuscaloosa was just on, and he thinks it might be a little bit better. But there were claims made by a lot of the coaches last year. This was an historically great year. SEC teams in the NCAA tournament, when the smoke cleared and the Elite Eight was selected, we had one SEC team, the same one that was there the year before, that went further than anybody, the Arkansas Razorbacks, the Fighting Musselmans, okay? I don't know if they're getting there this year. They're struggling, man. They're 1-5. That hole keeps getting deeper and deeper. Last year they started off 1-3, and then they caught on fire. Auburn wins the SEC championship last year, regular season. After being ranked number 1, went out quickly in the tournament against A&M, got into the second round of the tournament, and a Miami team coached by Jim Larinaga with 4-guard lineup just shut Auburn down, won by 20 points. So it wasn't. Talk about this year versus last year as only Matt Dean can do it.
Well, thank you, Rob. Good to be with you this morning. I tend to agree with Gary and maybe slightly better. And some of the reason I say that is a point you brought up. I'm looking at the standings right now, and you're telling me Arkansas, who started off the season red hot, is 1-5 in this league, in the bottom of the standings. They're going to make a run. We all thought that UK was kind of left on the wayside. They win their last 2 games after a really bad home loss to South Carolina. They went in and really did to Tennessee at Knoxville what Tennessee does to other people. They kind of won the fist fight, the rock fight, right? And they were really tough. They start out that game down 8-0. C.J. Frederick, a transfer from the University of Iowa. I hate to always bring up Iowa guys on your show, Rob, but
no, look, I'm a Hawkeye. I love the Hawkeye.
Listen, he scored 10 of their first 15 points. Coach Cal kept the game in the 50s and 60s, and they were very comfortable playing in that type of tempo of basketball game. You know, and obviously I'd be remiss not to talk about, the tragedy that Alabama faced this week, and they still go on and win a road game, and they're 6-0 at the top. And once again, Buzz Williams has kind of a nondescript, non-conference season. They go 8-5. non-conference. They're 5-0 in the league. Now you can say right now it's too early sample size. You know, the who you've played matters right now in terms of league play. We don't have a full sample size, but I really like Auburn and Tennessee. I just think Bruce Pearl's one of the best coaches in the country. He gets everything out of his guys. I think last year people took some shots at the early exit, but I think you hit it. I think that Miami team was playing really well. They're very well coached. The four-guard lineup, which you alluded to, matched up very well. You know, they couldn't get enough out of Kessler maybe that game. And then Tennessee's problem is this, and I've raised two boys in Memphis that for some reason are Tennessee fans, which I'm good with. They can guard anyone on the court at any time, but they go through these periods where, you know, Vescovi got a little shoulder ding the other night. He gets off the floor, and let's say they're not making perimeter shots. Ziegler missed like 4 layups. They struggle to score, Rob. And I will tell you, as a coach, I always wanted teams that defended at a high level. One of the stats that was really big to me was turnover margin. And I think you can win that way. But unfortunately, when you get in the NCAA tournament, and really it's the second weekend and beyond, I believe that, you're going to play some teams that may not be quite as good defensively. But, man, they got a couple dudes that can just put the ball in the hole. And when you get in foul trouble, you can't score a match, and all of a sudden you get an early exit. So, I mean, I agree with Gary. I think it's a little bit – it's just as good. Let's make that statement. It's just as good as last year. It's one of the best, not the best basketball conference in America.
Yeah. And speaking of lineups, and John Hartwell joins us right now. And welcome, John, Matt Dean, and I just getting started here in hour number 2 on this Thursday college football and basketball blitz. My dad one time was a guest of a friend of his on the courtside seats at the FedEx Forum for a Grizzlies game. And he said, boy, I'd come back with a beer in my hand and having a beer on the side. And the biggest human being I've ever seen in my life almost fell on top of me. Yao Ming. Remember that big fella? Yao Ming. So you think about a team that had the biggest man in the NBA. He was, 8 feet, 7 inches tall, weighed about 500 pounds. How many championships did they bring home?
No.
I mean, and then you look at that Miami team last year with Jim Larinaga, who is just one of these coaches that, God, that's a guy I'd love to talk to, pick his brain. 4-guard lineup. Why does everybody do a 4-guard lineup? If you can take a team with 4 guards and curb stomp last year's regular season SEC champion Auburn by 20 points in the NCAA tournament. I'm just curious, Matt, John, anybody want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I'll hop in. Good morning, guys. How are y'all today?
Good. Glad to have you.
Good to see you, John.
See, I think part of this, Rob, I'm going to go old school on you here. I'm going to go back to the Wilt Chamberlain days. I think development of post players is almost non-existent now because you've got everybody wants to get out there and shoot the three. You have very few fundamentally sound big men who go block to block, drop step, all of those things. It's about athleticism now, not technique. And I think that lends itself, you just do not see the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. When is the last time you saw a guy shoot a hook shot, a true hook shot in a game? You just don't see it there. The Kareem sky hook is almost non-existent today. Yeah. Because it's not glamorous. It's not getting out there, jacking up the threes, those things. I do think there's still a place for a big guy, but the challenge is a lot of today's offense, and we talked about this last week with Alabama, is predicated off getting the ball out on the break, either off a missed shot or a made shot. Used to be, made shot, possession changes, you inbound it, slowly get it up court, set up your offense. Today, you watch teams after a made bucket, they get it out and get it going fast. They try to fast break off a made bucket. So I think the development of big guys just isn't the same that it used to be. And even, people talk about European players compared to American players and fundamental skills of European players, and look all over the NBA. There's example after example. again, fundamentals. And again, I may be a basketball purist and old school in this, and I'd love to hear Matt's thoughts. The fundamentals of basketball aren't what they were, even 20, 25 years ago, much less 40 years ago.
Yeah, Matt, this is a question that was just sent in to us from Tojo Yamamoto, Rolling Forks, Mississippi. What do I remember that guy? Yeah, the chop. Remember him? Tojo Yamamoto says, in part what you just said, Rob, the NCAA tournament is built for guard-heavy teams. Your thoughts on that? Good points by Tojo Yamamoto, Rolling Forks, Mississippi, down in the Delta, I might add.
Well, John's spot on with post play. And another point to expound what John was talking about is because posts traditionally go, block to block all the way from 94 feet. You better have, if you're going to play a certain high-low game, let's say, you better have 2 or 3 of them because they're not conditioned like your athletic guards. They're going to play 32 to 35 minutes a game, right? Mm-hmm. So not only you have to develop one, you really have to develop a couple. And you also, sometimes you have to change your game plan because what do bigs traditionally do? The better ones, sometimes they're physically get in foul trouble. So you get in foul trouble and you're traditionally a team that plays a 4-out, 1-in or a high-low game, man, it changes how you're going to play the game of basketball. And you have to have a hybrid big. We always talk about the stretch 4. Heck, now in today's game, you need a stretch 5. You need someone that can face, can run the floor, and also post up and defend in the post. What I just described to you, give me 5 examples out of the NBA. They're just not there. And I'm talking about the highest level of basketball. But getting back to your question from Mr. Yamamoto, when we're talking the NCAA tournament, man, you have got to be prepared to be able to play games in the 80s and 90s and 50s and 60s. And that's where, if you look historically, guys like Bill Self, Mike Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, all the ones, one of my favorites, Jay Wright, exemplified that. Jay Wright's teams could play any tempo you wanted to play. I remember the game where they beat North Carolina in the buzzer on the trail back 3 from about 27 feet. I mean, they practiced that play to win games hundreds of times that year, and it just so happened they won in the national championship. So besides developing multiple bigs in my position, in my opinion, you got to have a coach that trains his team to play different tempos. And, what do new coaches do a lot of times when they're younger and they get jobs? They say, we're going to come in and we're going to play fast because everybody wants to see this high-flying acrobatic show. And that's great for the first 10 minutes of the basketball game. It's hard to play that way for 40 minutes.
Yeah, and you're looking at what you just said about the big guys. Look what we see on SportsCenter. That's really when it changed. The 6'7", 6'8" tweener, they call them, running up and down the court that can shoot threes, but nobody plays. How many guys play with their back to the basket? I mean, when we were coming up, the most coveted player was the 7-foot center who could move around. Remember Benoit Benjamin at Creighton for the Blue Jays? Yeah. That was a big man. And I think about Wilt Chamberlain. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the hook. I think Walker Kessler did a little bit of that. And by the way, he, as a rookie in the NBA, a couple of days ago, 20 points, 21 rebounds, 2 blocks. That guy's amazing. Bruce Pearl and that staff got him playing at another level. Same thing with Jabari Smith. But, John, you talk about it. It's good that you're a purist to the game. Never compromise is the victory of cowards, although it'll keep a marriage going for a long time. You just have to, sometimes you have to watch the Hallmark Channel instead of nonstop football. I mean, I'll admit every now and then, but that's why you have a basement to go to.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, basketball is in its purest form. As most any sport is, exploiting the weakness of your opponent. Yeah. And you talk about going the smaller lineup, the faster lineup. Again, if you can get going back to the handful of pure big men there are, if you can expose them by making them get up and down in a fast-paced game, it creates opportunities. And as Matt said, they're more prone to get in foul trouble because they're gassed getting up and down the floor, and as opposed to moving their feet. And I can still hear my high school coach like it was yesterday saying, Hartwell, move your damn feet, get your feet, don't play with your hands, don't move your feet. And a lot of times those big guys get gassed going up and down the floor, and they'll, commit a silly foul, reaching, slapping, whatever. And that's another art that's lost today. The pure shot blocker. And you talk about Walker Kessler. He's done a great job. His you got to have athleticism, but you got to have timing too to be an elite shot blocker, especially at the highest level.
Yeah. Well, you watched, and Jason Caldwell was on with us in the first segment inside the Auburn Tigers, talking about a couple of 5-star players. Jabari Smith, whose father played at LSU, played in the NBA, and then Johan Traore, another 5-star who ironically came from LSU to Auburn. Well, Jabari Smith, since he was old enough to walk, has been playing basketball with his dad. Fundamentally, he's solid as a rock, number 3 pick in the draft by the Rockets. Then you look at Traore, he hadn't been playing that long. He's a great athlete, but, repetition is the mother of all skill. And you got to get out there, and you think about coaches that preach fundamentals in games. And we lost a lot with Coach K. How many F-bombs could he drop every game? By the way, really, what that coach is saying on the sidelines, hey, he's doing magic with his team. Look at his record. Roy Williams, Jay Wright, that's the one. I mean, we are hurting in college basketball when we lose coaches like that. I mean, these coaches that really were innovative. I mean, 2 national championships at Villanova. Hell, I won the office betting pool when Villanova won that game in 2016 against North Carolina. I remember that well. But I want to ask y'all this about the culture. Someone wrote a great article a couple of years ago about Villanova. When they first got there, the first 3 years, they signed 5 or 6 5-star basketball players. And we know about Philadelphia. There's 50 colleges and universities there in the metro area of Philadelphia. They signed all those 5-stars, and they were hitting about 500 the first few years. Then they realized we're not recruiting kids that fit Villanova, a tough, private, Catholic university with very high, rigid academic standards, like the Citadel, like Rhodes, okay? Like UNLV when Jerry Tarkanian was there. But anyway, you go back and you think Jay Wright, and then they changed and they recruited the right fit. It's not about the matchups. It's about the matchups on game day and getting people that fit what you do that can handle the program, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, it really is. And I know you got to do a break here in a couple of minutes, Rob, but I waited 13 minutes today to bring up NIL, but I do want to talk a little bit about what I believe are the opportunities for the Villanovas, DePauls, Gonzagas, folks like that, Georgetowns, who don't have to find a bank to fund NIL in terms of their student athletes because they don't have the football component. And I think as we get further and further into this thing, you're going to see some of those schools, you talk about a Georgetown who has not been as successful as they were back in the John Thompson days.
Yeah.
And the Patrick Ewing as a player days. But it's an opportunity for those because they don't have to go find NIL deals for 85 to 100 to 110 football players. They can concentrate on basketball, and I think you're going to see a return to glory for some of those schools potentially.
Yeah, I'm not that we're going to go to the break, but I wouldn't disagree with you. And I think already we're seeing some blow-ups in this NIL. This Jaden Rashada guy out of California that was signed with Florida, had originally committed to Miami, then he signed with Florida. He's wanting out of his deal because it supposedly fell through. I mean, $13 million for a 4-star. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, how are you going to get that kid to get out of bed in the morning? I mean, he'll show up to practice in a Bentley. We'll talk more about it right after this quick commercial break on Sidelines.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Yeah, guys, talking about the NIL and that break apart over there at Florida with Jaden Shada, you're going to see more and more of these things because, again, funding people in the sales business before they go make the sales, it doesn't work. That's back asswards. Okay. It's just that's how that stuff goes. And I think it's not going to work. And I'll make a prediction. And John, you're talking about these smaller schools that don't have the football component. I think there's just going to be a break. Okay. We see solar panels, these solar panels on the side of the road. You'll see just like fields of them. Okay. And there's weeds growing up through them and everything. Every time there's a bunch of money hemorrhaging from Washington, it goes out to those things. If solar panels were the way to go, I can assure you the private sector would have embraced it a long time ago. And, I go back to, and here's a question from Irving R. Fletch, Provo, Utah. Yeah, he says, I would like to ask Matt and John both, as athletic directors and being on the administrative side with their experience and their background, what would they do if a 17-year-old kid and his posse, as he calls it, came into your office with a list of demands in order for you to get their son or daughter to your particular school? How would you react to that, being that we're all old school? No, we're not old school. We're just right.
I'll go quickly first, guys. I've been a long time coach and I've been a short time AD. So I'll just kind of put my coaching hat on here along with my AD hat. And as you know, my head's big enough to handle it. It's really an easy conversation. It's no different than the kid that wanted to transfer from my program. I would say, hey, I want your happiness, but this is probably not the right place for you right now. So I understand that it'd be a polite no. I mean, it's just, I'm not going to have someone take hostage of our program. I mean, that's just, it's interesting. And I want to say a quick stat before John answers this question, because John had mentioned Georgetown and Louisville. How about this? In our lifetimes, John, those two programs right now are combined 7-31 and winless. Both are winless in their respective conferences. Isn't that amazing? But go ahead, John. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, that is crazy. You look at somebody making demands like that, and it doesn't matter if they're a student athlete coming in, if there's somebody potentially that's coming to work for you, and I know you probably dealt with this, Matt, as you interview candidates for head coaching jobs. To me, that is an immediate red flag. If people have this huge demand list before they ever step foot on campus, before they ever score a point, make a tackle, do whatever, imagine what they're going to do with the taste of success. And I think, again, chemistry, this goes back to the team framework. Talent is important, but immense talent can be eroded very quickly by the lack of chemistry. And when you add somebody like that to your program, not just the student athlete, but if you've got the posse, if that's mom, grandma, whoever the influencers are in their life, you're asking for trouble if you go down that rabbit hole before they ever even step foot on campus.
Yeah. And for both of y'all, I mean, to me, that's like if your kid gets a car, you get him a car or her car, and they total it. Do you buy them another one when they're 17? Yes or no? Would y'all? If it was their fault?
Well, let me just tell you this, because I got to give you a quick story on Tyler Dean, who you brag about sometimes at Oregon. Tyler's 16, and we're going to go over and watch Christian Brothers High School play basketball, right?
Yeah.
He just got his license, and he wants to drive to the game. So I toss him the keys, and we get in the car, and he's back out of the garage, runs into my wife's other car, right?
Yes.
So I didn't say much. I turned around the car, saw the dent. We'll pop it out later. And I said, give me the keys. You're done. And
we'll go to Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Well, which is another great place to go. Another Christian Brothers person, I believe. And
that's right.
The reality is there's a lot of circumstances that goes into the decision as a parent, and just so you know, that's the hardest thing I went through as a parent to this day is when my children were learning how to drive. We started out with like an 03 Honda Pilot for Tyler, and he's a 17 grad. So he's not going to get the keys to the Cadillac. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are scaring me. My daughter just turned 14 last Friday, and in Arkansas, you can get a learner's permit at age 14.
There you go.
Iowa too. Yep.
Gee, thanks so much. I look forward to this, not only to the experiences, but to writing that check to the insurance company every month as well.
Well, it's fun. I'm just saying, a kid, the earlier they can learn to accept responsibility and work, the better. And that's why I'm saying this NIL. I cannot imagine at Christian Brothers High School, some parent of a 7th or 8th grader going out there and talking to Coach Tom Nix. God love him. I mean, just the legendary, at one time, the winningest coach in the state of Tennessee football history. Won the Silver Star at Iwo Jima in the Marine Corps, World War II. Daily celebrant at Mass at St. Louis with his wife up until he literally could not walk. Or Billy, Coach Billy Reed, Coach Russell Reed, Coach Billy Canale. I would pray for you if you tried to do that. I got 15 hours of Saturday school, moving a sand pile. We moved it 3 different times for, breaking a rule, a minor rule. I was 2 minutes late and then was told to clean up the parking lot after school. I took a bunch of trash out of my last period can of trash from Brother Hermes, handed it to Brother Adrian. He felt the trash and he said, Brown, it's 20 degrees outside. That trash is warm. It's 15 hours of Saturday school. I made the point. I think that NIL guys, when we look at the money that's supposedly being paid out, I really question, is it really being paid out? And I'd like to know the numbers on how many of these athletes are actually getting money. That's why I'm saying the pension, I think, is a great idea. So now you talk about basketball, both of y'all. You and Georgetown and Louisville are winless in their respective conferences. I mean, is that the result of not having strong NIL? Because they both have wealthy boosters, Yum Brands. That's Louisville. Georgetown. You think they don't have a lot of wealthy boosters? I think y'all both have poked the fire here, and I'm curious if you think we have 357 schools eligible to make the NCAA tournament every year. We have 131 Division I football teams now, counting James Madison, the newest member, that can make the college football playoffs, technically. What do you think is going to happen? You think we'll maybe have separate deals for schools that don't have football versus ones that do?
Well, I don't think you are going to be able to get away from the parameters of whatever it's, the NCAA, Congress, whoever. I think we were all hopeful when Tommy Tuberville said he was working, with some other members of Congress to come up with something from the federal perspective. And I'm not saying that's dead, but I wouldn't bet your home mortgage on that happening anytime soon. There's just, this is an important issue to a lot of people, but it's not, in relativity to the other things that Congress is dealing with, it is, it's down the list a little way. And the other thing is, and I know we don't like to get political on this show, it's very much divided along party lines right now, how people think about it. If you think about some of the things that Cory Booker has talked about versus what some of the Republicans, Tuberville, whoever else, I mean, they're miles apart.
Well, Matt, I think somebody has got to, with a spine, needs to stand up on the floor and punch back and say, look, quit portraying these student athletes as victims. Well, let's take a look at the opportunities they're afforded and the billions of dollars invested across the country at colleges and universities to provide them with a platform to succeed. And if they don't graduate, whose fault is that? My wife says over and over, I can't care more than you care. You can yell at people in practice, scream at them and holler at them, threaten them with a lack of playing time. And you know what? If that fire ultimately doesn't burn from within, it's not going to last, Matt. And your thoughts?
Well, I think we once you open the bag, you always are worried about getting it back in what you described. And what I mean by is, we talked about this probably the first 6 months of NIL. At some point, are we going to step up and look at, and the reality of this is, do we have a salary cap? And what I mean by that is, let's go to the young man that supposedly, and I don't believe this $13 million.
Yeah,
number.
I don't either.
I don't either. But let's just say every team, I don't care what sport. I'm not talking about the floor. I'm talking about the ceiling. And this is the max you could in your collective generate towards a certain sport, right? Well, then you have to make some different decisions. What you're really doing is you're becoming more of, you're leaving amateur athletics and you're going towards a professional model. And I understand that, but right now we've got this thing out of the bag and it's getting out of control. And just from conversations I've had with some people in the know, and what John said is spot on. It's divided, and I don't know how you change it, John. I don't know your thoughts if we ever got to that point. I think if we got to that point, we're probably reducing the number of teams that play for a championship and maybe no longer be, the NCAA for certain sports. I don't know. I mean, it's a really hard conversation to have.
Yeah.
Well, here is one of the things that is evolving, because for many years, the head coach has been the holder of the keys to the castle, because in a lot of student athletes' minds, especially those who may have their priorities skewed, i.e. basketball or football or girlfriend or something else may be way more important than going to class or studying or getting to practice on time, things like that. For a long time, the keys to the castle were playing time. If that coach could control playing time. But now, if Johnny or Julie is not going to class, not doing what they need to do academically, not getting to practice on time, not doing these things, not playing in a game is not quite so important to some of these kids that are getting big dollars put in their pocket on a regular basis. And then the NIL deal is, quote, outside of the university. So technically,
right,
if Johnny doesn't play or he's, benched for a game or two, his NIL deal doesn't say, okay, well, if you miss 2 out of 12 games of the season because the coach benched you because you weren't doing what you were supposed to do academically or socially or anything else, that doesn't mean, I'll go to my math here, 1/6 of whatever your NIL deal is not going to be held back because the school doesn't control that. And that's an issue because, again, some of these kids are getting enough money out of this deal to where school, forget that.
Exactly.
Practice, forget that. Competing at the highest level in the game, forget that. I'm getting my cash. And that is not a good scenario.
No.
Well, think about it. If there's so many of these big NIL deals out there, why aren't we seeing them? But I know one thing I do see. I see Joe Namath and Martha doing those Medicare commercials, and I have to change the channel. But they're everywhere. We're not seeing. We saw Bryce Young on some Dr. Pepper commercials. I go into Atlanta a lot. You'll see on some billboards for some attorneys. I think I've seen Brock Bowers. I've seen N'Kobe Dean. He's not even playing anymore. But it's not there but it's enough of a deal to where you and John, I want to get into this. This is a question that has been sent in to us. And I think it's a good one. And it's about, again, how much is NIL hurting the traditional fundraising arms of the universities and colleges across the country on all levels? Because athletics and academics have always competed for the money. Now you've got the fundraising of athletics, the NIL, and the academics. That's a battle that's going to be, that's a real war coming our way.
Yeah, it really is. And I think I mentioned the other day, it's really going to test the deep pocket theory of the donor bases of these schools. And I think if it continues to go unregulated like it currently is, I think you're going to see somewhere between 20 and 30, and I would err to the lower number there, of schools who legitimately can fund everything that they're funding right now, fund NIL, which is going to be a whole new cash flow out of donors and boosters and ticket holders' pockets, and continue what they've done from a facility standpoint, from a student athlete experience enhancement standpoint, because the well is just not that deep or that wide at most institutions. And the other component of this, and I had a lengthy conversation with somebody in Jackson, Mississippi yesterday about this, is, when these NIL collectives first came out, they were like, oh, well, we're going to get them to do some charity work, and so they can be 501c3s, and you can deduct your donation to that. That's not going to fly. I can tell you, even though the IRS may not be adding the 80,000 agents that they talked about for a while, that's not going to fly. And so, they give $100,000 on an annual basis to an NIL collective. You may find a creative, I use that term loosely, CPA out there that's going to try to run that through as a business expense, but it's not a charitable donation like it is giving it to Rhodes or the Citadel or Auburn or whoever it may be.
What we want to do after this break, I want to get into this next thing. This was brought up in a roundtable discussion I had last night, and it was brought up by Howard Sprague, a friend of mine who's a CPA and a county clerk. But he said, with what college tuition costs nowadays relative to what's being spent on facilities, it's worth discussion. We will after this quick break.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959, right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
Yeah, again, this question was brought up, and it's worth a discussion. Look at like I go back to when I graduated from Auburn in the late 80s, the cost for out-of-state tuition for a year was less than $3,000. Now you had other expenses if you were in the Elks Lodge or a fraternity or something like that, and you had, just general. But now, I mean, you're looking out of state, 45, 50,000 plus. Okay, now I think it's because the federal government, the student loan program, is hemorrhaging with money, and as long as they're going to continue to send it down there, colleges and universities are going to take it. And they're going to continue to build facilities. From 1965 to 1980, Dr. Philpott was at Auburn. And he was kind of like, well, we're just, let's have us a good football team there and win some games there and, just keep on going. Well, they built one building in that 15-year period. Pat Dye comes into Auburn January 2nd, 1981. Within a couple of years, there was $250 billion worth of new construction on campus, and it's never slowed down. But look at universities all across the country. So something, all this money that's being brought in, we talk about what we spend on, athletic facilities. We don't talk about what we spend on academic facilities. But if you're going to a liberal arts college and you're getting a degree in the antiquities or the humanities, or as Fawn Leibowitz's roommate said in Animal House, what are you majoring in? Huh? What are you majoring in? Primitive cultures. I mean, I'm sorry, but if I had a kid spending $75,000 a year on a college degree in primitive cultures or Elizabethan poetry, I'd be thinking to myself, I'm going to keep thinking to myself, that'd drive me to go down to Alex's Tavern and get beered up. I'm just wondering, where are we going to hit the ceiling before we go the other way? I understand colleges, you want to invest in facilities and all that, but man, this arms race, now it's going to be the cannibalization. You got your academic fundraising, you got the traditional fundraising, you got NIL collectives, and that NIL collective thing, people will grow weary of funding 7-5, 8-4 teams, folks. That's why I say this is going to collapse. It is not. It is absolutely not sustainable more than a few more years if it makes it that far, and I think it will correct. Trees don't grow to the sky.
Yeah, hey Rob, but one thing along those same lines, I think, especially at the very highest level, at the SEC level, at other Power Fives, you have seen, over the course of the last 15 or 20 years, as the money from the CFP and NCAA basketball tournament have grown, you've had some institutions who have had a surplus at year end that they have been able to transfer to the library or to do other things on campus. I know the University of Florida, I know Georgia, Alabama have all done those, but a lot of others have as well. So that has at least tempered some of the animosity that occurs on campuses between the academic side of the house and athletics, because you don't see it manifest itself publicly as much as you once did, but there is animosity that exists between a faculty member who may be making $55,000 or $60,000 a year, who absolutely puts in the number of hours that a coach or a athletic staffer does, who may be making $200,000, or to see what is spent on lavish facilities, or and even in some cases, professors don't understand teams that charter. I mean, that's a foreign concept to them. They just see what the cost is. So all of a sudden, put the NIL effect in there, and donations to the academic side of the house may wane some, or salaries may stay flat for faculty members, and you see student athletes who are getting paid more than faculty members. That is going to rekindle, in some cases, ignite in some cases, animosity between the academic side of the house and athletics on many campuses.
Yeah. Matt?
John is so spot on this, because even at our place at Rhodes College, we are the fundraising model in the last 5 years has really altered in our league. And what I mean by that is, we have a couple schools in our league that are just trying to keep their doors open, okay, let alone thinking about a facility enhancement. But like even us, and you've been on our campus, it's one of the most beautiful college campus architectures in the country.
Yep.
We can't just add positions. We can't just add enhancements in our side of campus only. It's a balancing act. Even though we don't have young student athletes that have these NIL deals, we are working with a vendor called Mogul to try to get our student athletes on a collective platform that we just had my first Zoom on it yesterday. But there are some challenges because, as I was told in the staff meeting yesterday, our endowment's $400 million, and we've had 6 out of 7 years either budget cuts or flat operational. And our answer has always been, we're going to use the fundraising model to meet some of those needs. Now, the last 2 years have been really tough with the cost of diesel fuel going up for the way we travel, but it's always a conversation about balance, and academics and athletics are real. And now you have these student athletes at some of these places making, whether or not they're making or not, perception is reality. It's out there. And I think it's hurting our culture. It's hurting some of the most beautiful things we've ever seen growing up in terms of the college athlete, the student athlete experience. But I still think football and men's basketball are really going to lead the ways. That we get lost here on the TV contract of March Madness. It supports 3% of that contract supports everything we do at Division III in a championship model. So the only way we're allowed to have championships funded by the NCAA is because of our Division I counterparts that basically, work with the contract and give us some money. So the reality of the situation is for us, if that ever goes away, if we want to have an NCAA tournament at our level, we have to fund it ourselves. And I'm going to tell you what, we have a hard enough time funding a regular season by ourselves.
Yeah.
So these things are real. The fundraising model as a whole, people are tapped out. And now, like you said, Rob, and I never thought about this till I started coming on your show, the more we take and give to NIL, the more we take away from things like operational budgets in the future. We take away from faculty enhancements, staff additions. It all adds up.
Yeah. Well, you think about at Auburn, Tigers Unlimited, the team behind the team. They write a check every year in May for about $18 million to the treasurer's office, which covers all the scholarships. And they have like 580 something student athletes at Auburn. Auburn and Alabama don't take funding from the state of Alabama. They're all privately funded. It gives you a lot of power when you do that, because if you take a lot of money from the state or the federal government, you're giving up control, and you can get over leveraged. A lot of investment companies, they do that. They keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. You remember the movie Goodfellas? The guy said, "Hey, what do I know about running the restaurant business? Come on, Wally, you're gonna take over my restaurant." I don't know anything about running the restaurant business. What happened when things went bad? And they torched it. I mean, John, I saw this text on here, and this came in from you, and it's along the lines of something that our good friend Yule Gibbons down in Jacksonville, Florida said. So I'll say, worth talking about: potential reduction of money that donors give to the academic side of the house. And again, I am proud to be a graduate of Auburn University. My dad, son, that's in our blood. Wherever you went to school. And by the way, these Rhodes kids that we've had intern where I've worked over the years, Matt, somebody over there, I don't know if it's you, but Richie or somebody, teaches these kids the most valuable lesson. They show up, and you know what they always say? What can I do to help? And you know what 5 o'clock means? 4:30. But John, talk about that. We'll bounce back and forth. We got John Hartwell, years of experience at Ole Miss, Troy, most recently 8 years as AD at Utah State, in the mild temporal climate of Logan, Utah. Oh my God. I just think about the weather out there right now in the land of Jim Swarthout. But talk about that, John Hartwell, because this is big and it's not being talked about enough.
Yeah. I mean, you look, let's just talk about, endowed positions and endowed chairs of faculty members, things like that versus, and it's become a recent trend, endowed athletic director chairs or endowed head football coaches chairs, things like that. And again, if the pot is only so deep in terms of what donors and alums are giving and athletics giving, including under the umbrella of that NIL, which doesn't flow through the university, but it impacts what people give, especially in an economy that we're in today with high interest rates and challenges from a market standpoint. Although, I think we talked off air yesterday. Rob's got it down. He says, buy low, sell high. That's the secret to everyone's financial success. But
tell me where there's blood in the streets. That's Sir John Templeton's famous line. That's where I'm buying.
But, it's like I said, the undercurrent of that animosity is still there. And I shouldn't say animosity, maybe too strong a word. In some cases it is, but there's a jealousy across the street or across campus that, hey, athletics gets the rather right, wrong, or indifferent, the label of being the 900-pound gorilla. They go do whatever they want to and, beg for forgiveness later. And, this, as you see, and it's very public, you don't necessarily read about the salaries of an assistant professor in the business school. You're going to read about the salaries of every member of that football staff, or the fact that, they just added 3 new analysts, quality control, recruiting coordinators, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And that gets in the newspaper, and that assistant professor who's, again, making $45,000, $50,000 reads this and if there's enough money for that, why isn't there enough for me to get a cost of living raise or something like that? So, I mean, that's something that's going to have to be dealt with as we continue down the path of this NIL deal as well.
Well, that's the free market, though. How many people are coming to watch a lecture on Elizabethan poetry or on the Peloponnesian Wars or about the Battle of Thermopylae, which Greek translation to English, the Hot Gates, 484 BC. Xerxes the Great against the Spartans in the 300, the occasions, the Thespians. You better know your history, folks. But anyway, Matt Dean, I like what he said, and I'm getting a lot of chatter on my phone during this thing right now about the academic and the athletic side. But the free market brings in 90 or 100,000 people to a game. That's the athletic part. The academic part, you have tenured professors. Can you imagine that, Matt Dean? It's almost impossible to fire you. And there are other places in America where it takes almost an act of God to fire people. And we know the kind of results we get when people are not living in fear of their job. They don't work that hard.
It's interesting because the larger programs are always, large attendance at Saturday football. You have basketball arenas being sold out. And I've told you this before, even athletics at our level, we have 550 student athletes, 21 sports. I think 23 if you count indoor track and field. Yeah. Our net tuition revenue per kid is $20K. Do the math. I mean, we're looking at $11 million revenue annually for our college just out of having an athletic team that we don't even charge to get in our games, Rob. You could come over and watch us play for free.
Yeah.
So just a model. I mean, we're recruiting 33% of our student body, right? Think about that number at Rhodes. That's an incredible number. I mean, we're recruiting annually between 160 to 180 student athletes, okay? Yeah. And that's out of a class that's usually about 515. So just the interest, even at our level, when we're not selling out games and we're not even having season tickets. And that's what I think faculty understand the importance of the role that student athletes play. At our level, I don't have to worry about a TV report that says the salary of my football coach or whatever, or the raise that he or she just got, right?
Yeah.
In certain sports. And I think that's what makes it more difficult, what John was describing, for some of the challenges of ADs, at Utah State or wherever. I know, my cousin, Tom Bowen, he had some challenges at Arkansas State that were real. And he had some challenges people don't know. When he went to the University of Memphis, he inherited a $7.2 million deficit, was able to get funds in football they haven't had in years. They went to 9 straight bowl games. I know he's not there anymore, but it's all about trying to keep everybody happy. And that's the role of an AD. And let me tell you, that's why I'm no longer an AD, because it's a hard role. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can't forget our old good friend, the Super Booster from Slap Out, Alabama. Yes, sir. Foghorn Leghorn. He's always out there. He's always out there on the periphery. But I think both of y'all have done an exemplary job of painting the picture, putting in the vernacular what really goes on. John, again, we got 2-minute warning. I want to say, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Think about what that means. Go out and help people with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Don't give to get, give to give. John, those numbers, that rate of return, 20,000 per student athlete at Rhodes, and they have 11 million. They don't even charge for the games. How about them numbers? What do you think there?
Yeah, I mean, that's really impressive. And it's, it's a different model. And I said this, a few years ago. I don't want to age either Matt or myself, but when my nephew played for Matt at Denison, even back then, and it's evolved a lot. I love to call Division III athletics unadulterated athletics. And the reason why I say that, and it's still the kids are playing for the love of the game. They're not getting a scholarship. They're playing for the love of the game, and that they develop the passion in youth leagues and junior high and high school. And even though they're not getting their tuition paid for, they're doing it for the love of the game. And I think there is absolutely something to be said about that when we talk about the challenges at the highest
There
level.
are. Hey, look, we've run out of time today. We got a great discussion. Next Thursday, I've already got someone who's involved in fundraising that wants to join in on our round table. So let's do it. John Hartwell, Matt Dean, thank you so much. Hey, folks, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Find excuses to win. That stands for whatever is necessary. See you tomorrow. We're out of here.